Have you ever heard of an enemy so ruthless that God himself declared war against them from generation to generation? A people whose reputation was not bravery, but treachery. They did not confront their foes face to face. They struck from behind, always targeting the weary, the frail, and the defenseless. This enemy is written into the very fabric of Scripture. Again and again, their name surfaces, drenched in cruelty and rebellion. They are the Amalekites, a people who came to symbolize open defiance against God, and yet also became a canvas on which the justice of God would be revealed. The Amalekites were not strangers from distant lands. They were family, descendants of Amalek, the grandson of Esau, Jacob's brother. From the womb of Isaac and Rebekah, two lineages were born, one chosen to bear the promise, the other destined to oppose it. Every clash between Israel and Amalek was more than a border conflict. It was spiritual, like the ancient rivalry of Jacob and Esau, still reverberating through time. Israel walked beneath covenant, chosen as guardians of God's promise. Amalek chose rebellion. They did not bow before God's law. They did not acknowledge his sovereignty. They became wanderers in the desert, not rooted in faith, but hardened by violence. The Negev, their land, was merciless. Scorching sun, scarce water, unforgiving terrain. But it was not the desert alone that shaped them. It was the cruelty of their hearts. The Amalekites became a people known not for wisdom or kindness, but for plunder and bloodshed. Their first attack against Israel was at Rephidim. Picture the scene: Israel freshly delivered from Egypt, still trembling from centuries of slavery. Like a child learning to walk, they were fragile and unsteady, carrying both the weight of the past and the uncertainty of freedom. And it was then, in their most vulnerable moment, that Amalek struck. Not in open battle, but in cowardly ambush. They targeted the stragglers, the elderly, the sick, mothers with little ones. It was cruelty in its rawest form. Moses understood immediately. This was no ordinary battle. It was a spiritual confrontation. He called Joshua to gather men for war, while he himself climbed a mountain with Aaron and Hur. From the mountain's peak, Moses lifted his hands to heaven, and in that simple gesture, an eternal truth was revealed. As long as his hands were raised, Israel prevailed. But when they fell, Amalek surged forward. The battle was not decided in the valley alone. It was being fought on two fronts, one visible, one unseen. When Moses grew weary, Aaron and Hur stood beside him, holding up his hands until the sun went down. And with that unity, warriors in the valley, intercessors on the mountain. Israel won. That day, God showed his people a principle that would echo through generations. Victory does not come by human strength alone. It comes through prayer, obedience, and unity. The sword in the valley and the hands lifted on the mountain, both were needed. Together, they secured triumph. But God also made something else clear. This was not a battle to be remembered as a mere victory. It was to be written down as a decree. Amalek had raised a hand against God himself, and their end was sealed. Their memory would one day be blotted out from under heaven. Centuries later, that command came again through the prophet Samuel. King Saul was sent to carry out the divine sentence: utterly destroy the Amalekites. This was not about conquest or plunder. It was about judgment. But Saul faltered. He spared King Agag. He kept the best of the livestock. And when confronted, he cloaked his disobedience in the language of worship, claiming the spoils were meant for sacrifice. But Samuel's response cut through every excuse. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. In those words lies an eternal truth. Partial obedience is disobedience. Saul lost more than a battle. He lost his crown. He showed that you can win wars before men and yet be defeated before God. Samuel himself finished what Saul refused. Before the people, he executed Agag. It was a hard act, but it declared once and for all, the word of the Lord cannot be bent, postponed, or redefined by human convenience. Later, David, unlike Saul, stood firm. When the Amalekites rose against him, he struck back with unwavering faith, rescuing captives and reclaiming what was stolen. Under his leadership, Israel's hope was restored, and the shadow of Amalek began to fade. Finally, in the days of King Hezekiah, the last remnant of the Amalekites was destroyed. What God had spoken in the wilderness of Rephidim was fulfilled completely. The story of Amalek is more than history. It is warning, encouragement, and prophecy all at once. It teaches us that obedience to God must be total. Half-hearted obedience cost Saul his kingdom. That evil may strike the weak, but God himself rises to defend them. That victory is won not only with weapons in hand, but also with faith and prayer lifted heavenward. And that God's justice, though it may seem delayed, always comes in his perfect time. The Amalekites became a symbol of rebellion. In our own lives, we face our Amaleks, temptations, struggles, and spiritual opposition. Yet their story reminds us that no matter how fierce the enemy, victory is assured when we trust the Lord, obey his word, and stand united in faith. So if this message has stirred your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel so that the word continues to reach more lives. And tell me in the comments, what part of this story spoke to you most deeply? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Until next time, walk in faith, stand firm in obedience, and remember, the Lord fights for his people, and his justice never fails.